Hey everyone, I've written movie reviews and posted them after I've seen generally movies I like. I like promoting and talking about movies, and I'm a total movie buff, especially sci-fi and fantasy movies and adventure movies and things like that. But this time I wanted to post this as a warning because Independence Day Resurgence has just come out this weekend, and it is a god-awful mess, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit on my channel and see whether anybody was at all interested in my opinion about this. I've made a couple notes about this since this is the first time I'm doing it. So first off, I want to say that Independence Day, the original movie 20 years ago, was amazing. It was not a great piece of cinematic art by any stretch. It was a disaster movie, popcorn flick that was a lot of fun. It had, a not so original story, but it had some fun, quirky characters that you could instantly connect with. Will Smith, of course, came off as extremely charismatic in that movie, but so did Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, and the rest of the cast really did a pretty good job as a great big set piece, all over the United States, and of course with New York and the White House and California and all these places around the world totally getting obliterated in the process. It was not a heavy, super serious movie, but it definitely was a disaster film in the tradition of the old Irwin Allen 1970s disaster films, and it was a lot of fun to watch, and it was a lot of it was even inspiring in a way. We'll never forget Bill Pullman's speech on the 4th of July, and we will not go quietly into the night. That was really great stuff. So you came out the other end of it not disappointed in a story that rolled out and went to a really great conclusion. And of course, it's not like we didn't see that coming. And another part about that original movie, Independence Day, was that when there were character sacrifices and people dying, it mattered because the characters had connected with us. I mean, Randy Quaid's character at the end even. These deaths mattered. They meant something. The sacrifices were worthy, and they made you feel for it. So that's what we have to compare this to. And so now we have 20 years later. I can't believe it's been 20 years. And they come out, Roland Emmerich is not known for making movies that are heavy on story, but this was particularly bad. The movie itself it's just awful. And it seems that all the budget for this film went into the amazing, truly amazing special effects. I mean, there were no mistakes made in that regard, right? They just have shots of the moon, they got shots of space, they have, disasters occurring all over the world. But one of the things that distracted me from the get-go is, they have this. There's not going to be a lot of spoilers here. I'm not going to be posting. I'm not meaning to spoil anything if you want to go see this movie. But I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the aliens come back and that they come back bigger and better than ever as far as, the story goes. And they come back in this ship that apparently is 3,000 miles across. I mean, it's this gigantic monstrosity of a ship. So we're talking planet-sized ship, and they make the comment as it's coming in that it could, if it doesn't slow down, it could slice the planet in half. But they don't do that, right? Instead, they have other plans. And so this ship comes down and wreaks all this havoc on the planet. And so big, it has its own gravitational field. And yet, that science-y sort of stuff is only used when it's convenient. And when it's not convenient, they're not doing any of that stuff, that science-based stuff, and things happen that just don't make any damn sense as far as this technology and whatnot goes. That was distracting, but what was more distracting was the complete lack of any coherent, real story that made you at all interested in what was happening. Because there were so many plot holes almost from the very first scene, inconsistencies from things that happened in the first movie, things that were just dropped. It's very notable that Will Smith was not in this movie, but also Mary Louise Parker was also not in this movie. She, in Independence Day, she was a key character, and she was Jeff Goldblum's love interest, and she's just not even a mention about her in this. At least Will Smith gets a memorial. He gets his picture on the screen, and he died in some some test accident or something. Not so with her. There's just short shrift given to some of these plot inconsistencies, but mostly the characters in this movie don't matter at all to the audience. And it's really disappointing to have this much time to set up a story that would be fitting for something that happens 20 years later, but to instead be given cardboard cutout characters. And I mean literally, like really, 1 or 2 lines of exposition giving their background, their name, and what their motivation is, and that's it. That's all you get. And then it's up to the actor, and most of them are not really up to the task, and the story doesn't flesh any of these people out. The only exception being Liam Hemsworth's character, who's given probably the most screen time. Almost from the beginning, you're sort of, he's presented as this, guy who's really amazing, but he screwed up, and so he's not so amazing, and he ends up being, the main hero of the story. The rest of the young cast, the new guys who were brought on, they're not given a chance to really do anything. And the actors are either trying too hard or just aren't adequate to the task of filling the holes that the story and the screenplay doesn't give them to fill. So that kind of went nowhere. And, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. These great big set pieces, these big, huge special effects production films can be a lot of fun, and I really enjoy them when they're done right. And yet, when they're not done right, it's not done right because of a crappy story that you just can't care about anything that's going on. It's great to show you in high-res super 3D the end of the world. But if it doesn't matter, if there's no consequences to it, if none of the characters have connected with you, then why would you care about what's happening? You're watching a movie. You're not watching the end of the world. So you need to have some kind of connection to what's happening. And when you're distracted, and this has always been the test for me when I'm watching a movie, is it can be a bad movie. The new Star Trek movies are not great movies when it comes to the storyline. They're full of logic and plot holes. But I wasn't distracted by those things while I was watching them. I was very much entertained. In this movie, I'm distracted every 3 minutes by some horrible, horrific plot hole that I'm falling into. I can't keep up with the story because I keep asking questions about what's going on. And so I'm distracted from all the brilliant special effects and brilliant these gigantic sets and this sort of thing that clearly millions and millions of dollars were spent on. Lots of time and attention spent on all these little details. And who cares? And that's kind of the problem with this movie. It was the same kind of problem that plagued the Star Wars prequels. They were, these gigantic, all this digital magic, and yet, horrendous acting and insultingly bad characterization leaves you going, yeah, okay, whatever. And you walk out going, And that's how you walk out of this one, right? And that's what was so disappointing about it, is after having 20 years to do it right, they did it totally wrong and kind of insult the audience in the process. So that's my warning to you. Avoid this movie like the plague. I really don't think you're going to enjoy it. I heard before I went, I heard the bad critic reviews. I've heard bad critic reviews before. I've sloughed them off. Sometimes the critics got it wrong. Sometimes the critics got it right. In this case, the critics got it right. And if you look up the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, you'll see the audience responses as well are just, they're just panning this thing. And I think it's like at 34% or something right now, approval, which is pretty bad, especially for something that had this much invested in it. So anyway, that's my warning to you. I hope that this is helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.